Alright, time for another draft physics, draft science here on YouTube, video presentation. Anyway, we'll do a brief on comments, just brief, just no point. Waste of time. So all these fake accounts, so anybody who shows up now, just letting the trolls know. You got more than 3 words in your name, fuck it, I'm not paying any attention. Okay, fuck you, you're done. Blocked, that's it. Just not worth the trouble. You're dead wrong about Eddington's experiment never being replicated. So no evidence of this will be provided. It's been replicated many times. No, it hasn't. I've been to all the published experiments. Read them all. You're just full of shit. With dwarf stars. Well, if you know anything about the Eddington experiment, you know the Eddington experiment doesn't care whether it's a dwarf or it doesn't care what the light source is. It just cares about having a source of light that's in a consistent, non-moving position relative to us, that is far away, and whether or not the light gets bent by going around the sun. Dwarf, smorf, what couldn't possibly matter to the Eddington experiment. It's called Google dipshit. Yes, it's called a link dipshit. Links came before Google. So before Google even existed, there was a thing called a link on the internet. It's basically how the whole fucking thing works, retard. So, whatever. Yeah, fuck you. Remove. Yes, just hide user. No, why don't you just say blocked? Why don't you just go back to the old language? This fucking cunt bullshit. Hide user. No. Make the point that this user is a piece of scum. Label this user as scum. You know, the appropriate thing here. This hide user bullshit. Fuck you, YouTube, for even doing that. Oh yes, I'm hiding from the fucking lying piece of shit. No, I'm really not. It's just that the lying piece of shit keeps shitting on everything. I wish I had. Maybe I'll call Google. You know, make some spam phone calls to Google. So apparently they approve of spam and bullshit and wasting their time. Maybe I'll engineer ways to just waste their fucking goddamn time. So they have to pay employees. Maybe I just make incessant phone calls complaining that my video is 3 millimeters too small. Why is that? You know, I'll press all the little buttons on the phone so I can bother one of their fucking employees and waste their fucking time. Because apparently Google doesn't care about wasted time. Cunts. It's just fucking stupid. Alright, I really want to thank you for your videos. The man makes it hard to swallow. Yes, Ken Wheeler's full of shit. He uses difficult words, and in the end, he is telling you nothing. Yes, he's telling you nothing. And if whatever he's telling you can't possibly make sense to you if you have any kind of reasoning skills. Magnets are doing this, and there's tornadoes, and there's all this stuff. How is all that stuff being generated? Where's the energy come from for all of that fucking bullshit? I mean, you people who think magnets are little motors with all this stuff going on in them, there's absolutely no evidence of anything moving around a magnet. Nothing. It doesn't do anything. The stuff around, like the Earth and gravity, gets moved, but again, gravity, you understand, isn't doing some swirly shit. It isn't doing some magical thing. Okay? It's just low pressure, high pressure. Anyway, you never learn anything from his video. Well, you'll learn that the world is just covered with sack of shit lying pieces of scum. I learned a lot from your video, so thank you. Okay, well, whatever. There's more? Oh, no, there isn't. Thank you. Okay, can you update the writing on your website? Yes, I really probably should, but really, frankly, nobody reads it, so what's the fucking point? I mean, Google doesn't index anybody's content, but, you know, Facebook and all this other crap, and so, you know, it doesn't really, the website isn't generating any interest in the subject, so there's no real point in having websites anymore, because the search engine is controlled by the Google algorithm, and it has a personal algorithm for every individual, so depending on what you like, you'll get just spammed with a bunch of stuff similar connected to what you're like, and that's it. You won't see the real internet. You'll see the internet conform to your personal preferences. It's just such a pile of shit. We don't have it's not a very low odds, let's just put it, of any, say, the subject of magnetism, my video, or my channel page, or I mean my website page coming up. Very low probability. Alright, So it was thinking clearly too, guy. I mean, I don't even know if I want to read all of this tripe, but it just keeps doing this crap, or he just keeps talking about this crap. The troll posted the comment to me, not to you. Yeah, duh. I could see that. That's not a controversy. Tell me what I already know, clearly already know. It's just such horseshit. That's not the subject at all. The subject is, why are you communicating with him? You just make it more complicated for me to block somebody if there's a comment thread. You do understand that, right? That as soon as one of you assholes engages with a troll, and you might actually get on a real physics subject, then I'm obligated to delete that whole thread. You get it? No, of course you don't get it. You don't have any idea what it's like being on this side of the camera, and so you're just talking out of your ass, and then pretending you're not being a pain in the ass. No, you're being a pain in the ass. If it didn't look like it was sarcastic to you, fine. No, it's not fine. Frankly, it's impossible for it to look like sarcasm. You say, what do you mean by that? And then the guy makes some stupid comment, and you say, good one. Where am I supposed to find the fucking sarcasm anywhere? There was no fucking sarcasm. I mean, fuck. And then he pulls this bullshit. Default to go nuclear. I don't go nuclear. Blah, blah, blah. All this is just such fucking raggy shit. Okay? I mean, the tiny percentage of my videos where I'm going nuclear, when most 90% of the content is me drawing, doing stuff, talking physics, and you assholes, because there's that 10%. Yeah, I mean, you're just looking to complain. You're just a fucking complainer. All right, but it's up to you. I made the offer. You want to you want to utilize at some point still. So again, you're just still pretending that I said something otherwise. And somehow I indicated that I'm not going to write any questions and I'm not going to play along and blah, 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 blah. I just said I'm kind of discouraged. It doesn't sound like this is going to actually work. You don't have any reason to think it's going to work. But fine, whatever. Shit. Alright, so let's just delete this crap. So then, again, the troll. Nice, that's a good word. I like it. Niche. Okay, or something like that. It's just useless drivel, of course. So let's just delete this first to hide this guy, and then we'll delete this one because it just, this subject is over, done, finished. We're not doing it anymore. I mean, if you bring it up again, then you'll get blocked because this is just a waste of my fucking time. Alright, so then he did another comment. I mean, just can't let it go. One last point on trolls. It seems a repeat offender show up, blah, 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 blah. So he's basically saying, why don't you just delete their comments, and then blah, blah, blah. Well, that's exactly the problem, right? Then if I delete them without showing them or reading them, then the accusation can be made that I'm just ignoring the counter-argument, blah, 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 blah. And then assholes like you will comment, well, it seems there's no comments here. It seems like you're restricting the conversation. It seems like you're evading the conversation. Some assholes show up saying that shit. I mean, she's just so fucking goddamn, why don't you just be overtly, basically say, yes, I'm just here to fucking harass you, because that's all this is harassment. Your stupid advice is fucking useless. If there was some simple solution, well, then I would be applying the simple solution, wouldn't I, asshole? Fuck. Shit. So I have applied one simple solution, at least for the people that have, like I say, more than 3. Okay, if you have more than 3 words in your channel description, fuck you. Alright, so we'll just delete this. And just be done with this horse shit. Okay. Alright, so that's it for that crap. So the subject I was working on was this whole argument, about evidence, and about why there is such a resistance to what seems to me this kind of easy scenario: 2 + 2 = 4. And somebody explains to you how a 4 is made. I mean, a 4 is something that has 1, 2, 3. Your finger goes up and down 4 times when you count. 4, that's 4. right? And 2 plus 2, when you add those up, there's 4 of those up and down things. And so it's just open and shut kind of thing. And I'm basically arguing that, yes, okay, I've given you an explanation for the physics of the universe that unifies and simplifies and explains everything and provides an explanation of magnetism that's just perfect. I mean, it just doesn't have any, it makes perfect sense. It explains what polarity is. It explains why the mechanism works, and it fits right into what charge is, and then it fits right into what electricity is, and it fits into atoms changing and becoming polarized. And it's 2 plus 2 equals 4, and your people are insisting no, it equals 3 or 17 or some other bullshit number, and you're saying, well, what evidence is it that you're looking at, and what are you looking for when you're looking at evidence? Because it doesn't make any logical sense to me that you're clinging to these empty, vacuous answers of bent bullshit which you can't bend in 3 dimensions. Again, explain to me how I bend something in 3 dimensions all at once. I mean, it's clearly, I can just keep showing you the evidence. I can show you Susskind, one of the head guys teaching the subject of Einstein's theory, and he explains it as a convergence in all directions. It has nothing to do with anything being bent. It has to do with the flow of fluid. Mathematically, that's what it duplicates. So, do you really believe that every little subatomic particle is a vacuum cleaner pulling on some magical ethery crud? Again, Einstein conceded that if you're going to take him seriously, you've got to believe in an ether, because space can't be nothing anymore. You can't bend nothing. You can't converge. You can't have an anti-divergence of nothing. So, and why do people cling to this stupid ether thing? There can only be some things. There cannot be any nothing. Just amazing. So anyway, I was just thinking about how we reach our conclusions, and so these little cliches popped in my head, and show me is a good one. Well, if you're going to claim something, just show me. Show me it doing it. Show me. Draw me a picture. Show me. And when you do the show me for virtual photon, what does it look like? Oh, it looks exactly like what I'm describing, in the sense that they don't recognize the polarization part, but Maxwell's drawings and Faraday's drawings are of a radial force, straight line force. And you want to know what the force is in different locations, you just measure how close the straight lines are to each other, because they diverge from the center, just like gravity would. And that's all you do. You just measure how much the lines diverge, but it's a straight line force for charge and magnetism. Those are the lines of force. The field lines, well, they're a different thing. So where was I? Well, anyway, show me. So I'm just saying, I've shown you, the basic mechanism, it works, and here you are clinging to 2 ideas that they can't show you. They can't show you how their virtual photons create attraction in one case and then repulsion in the other, because they haven't polarized the ether. I mean, without a polarized ether, that is, without an ether that can be separated into the black ether and the white ether to do the 2 different things, they're never going to come up with an explanation for how the same force creates attraction one minute and repulsion the next minute. It ain't going to happen. They don't have a mechanism, so they're going to stick for hundreds of years. They're going to stick with saying to you virtual photon as an explanation for something, and the explanation doesn't even explain anything. They can't draw you the picture of the virtual photon making 2 magnets attract, or the virtual photon making 2 magnets repel. They can't show you how it happens. Nothing. And again, when they do gravity, they're going to show you a vacuum cleaner just pulling. No exit for the vacuum cleaner. No explanation for what keeps the motor running. Nothing. No explanation of the energy needed. Where's the vacuum cleaner plugged in? Nothing. So they show you nothing, and you're convinced. Alright, so another concept was time tested, but you're saying, well, yeah, religion was time tested. it's still surviving. So the test of time it doesn't mean too much. But clearly with some things, if you were to keep doing an experiment, just say, well, we know gravity exists, that's been time tested. The reliability of gravity has been time tested in the sense that you've done it over and over and over and over and over, and it always works. It just never fails to show up. So there's some value to that concept, but it isn't specific enough. So seeing is believing. That's a good little cliche thing. Again, so draw the picture. Show me. Seeing is believing. What are they showing you? So in the two-slit experiment, I could show you, or what they're showing you is that they're going to present you only the affirming evidence. All the evidence that isn't consistent, they're going to kind of push off to the side and try to manipulate. So I always kind of wondered why when Professor Lewin taught the slit refraction event, he chose to start with the two-slit and then do the multi-slit and then do the single slit. And I was like, well, why are you doing it in reverse order? I mean, mixed up order. And they're doing it because, yeah, it's a lot harder to do if you keep the other two pieces in the same context of the conversation. Because your first question is, if they present you with the single slit experiment and say, well, now I'm going to explain to you this magical wave phenomenon. I'm going to prove to you that light's a wave. Well, then you have to explain, so the light goes into a single slit, and unlike water, the wave breaks into two and interferes with itself. So completely unlike a water wave, nothing like a water wave, somehow the wave breaks in two for no reason. There's no thing to break it into two waves. There's only one wave that gets broken into, and one wave that goes through, just like water. So it's counter evidence. It's evidence saying the water wave analogy doesn't work. It's not the same at all. Has very little similarity to water waves. And the multi-slit is the same problem. It doesn't create little images at different locations of what went in. It does matter in water. If I put dye in the water, you'd see that the dye doesn't go mix as it goes through the impediments. That sorry, there's certain rules to what's going to happen. I better take a drink or something. We don't want to be making hideous, ugly, horrible noises in the middle of the video. I gotta remember how to do this thing. The liability of morning videos, I guess. After running 4 miles or whatever. Anyway, so this is selection. There's just a select of the evidence that makes it look where it looks like, seems like, and the stuff that doesn't seem so much like, they just ignore that and pretend we don't really have to explain how the wave gets created anymore, because we did that in the two-slit. So we'll just ignore that subject and we'll sort of ignore the pattern. We'll just do the math. And the math isn't accurate in the sense that the math isn't telling you, it's just telling you intensities. It's not telling you, oh, it's really an image you're projecting in the multi-slit. So they're ignoring what you're really getting, which is images of the light that went through. It matters where the light goes through the slit. The light that goes through here and the light that goes through here, they do parallel things, and that's just a fact. And so the pattern is really a pattern of the surfaces. The surfaces are what's controlling what gets on the screen. Anyway, seeing is believing, but only when you're shown all of the evidence, not just the part they selected. Not there's probably a word for that. And that's going to distort your view. So seeing is important, but seeing can also be a deception when you're only shown one part of it. Alright, evidence has volume and weight. Now this is an interesting kind of, just thinking about the idea of what evidence is. That you can have a lot of little facts, not very important circumstantial things, that end up being coincidental or something, and you're just like, well, how many coincidences can you have? So you can have a volume of evidence and then a lot of little things say it's true, or you can have big evidence like DNA and fingerprints and, you know, a photograph, a videotape. So that's part of what you have to judge, is how important is the piece of evidence you have. I mean, how significant is this a fact? So when you're doing this gravity thing, it's both volume in the sense of, oh yeah, we can do the experiment over and over again, so there's a volume, but it's not really the same kind of volume I'm talking about. I'm talking about a volume of different little experiments. But it's weight. You know, this is pretty reliable. It's right in front of you. You know, you really don't have to think about, you know, any kind of mystery involved in the sense of okay, it does one thing. There's one consistent thing that happens in a consistent way. And so you could at least draw a conclusion about that fact, the fact that it happens. So you're sure about the happening, and now you have to describe why it happens. And that'll get more complicated. So I would argue that, you know, from my perspective, the weight would be something like where I point out no other theory of a mechanism explains magnetism as well as mine. I mean, it just does. It just perfectly explains why there's attraction, why there's repulsion, and explains the strength of that force. Where the rest of the theories are just nonsense, where they say they have a bunch of swirly stuff and there's this tiny bit of attraction and tiny bit of repulsion. So you have 99% of the energy is doing something that somehow we don't see, and we only see the 1% effect. So like when you see two magnets move together, everybody else has this dopey idea that there's 1,000,000 times essentially more energy in the magnet that we're not tapping. You know, the energy creating the swirl in the ether is far greater than the energy of the attractive force or the repulsive force. And so why are they trying to tap the repulsive and attractive force? They should be trying to tap all of those tornadoes that they say exist. You know, they're made of the same thing. So why can't they tap them? You know, why can't they figure out how to put a water wheel into tornado and collect all the energy? Anyway, alright, so point is just that in this argument, I could say that I have a ton of evidence on my side. Simplicity, completeness, in terms of the theory covering everything, and all of the experiments can be explained using it. It works. And so that's a volume of evidence. Now the weight of it, again, these are all experiments where we can't actually see anything. You know, we can't just see the photons do it. We can't see the little bits being segregated for their charge, and we can't, you know, there's no videotapes. Alright, anyway, so logical context. That's sort of understanding that, you know, if there's 1,000,000 to 1 odds of something, you know, you have to know what 1,000,000 to 1 means. Well, is that a lot or is that little? You know, what's the context? So say if it's, you know, you have a blood type that's only 1 in 100 people have, but you're living on an island with 6 people, you know, it's a lot more significant. You know, the rareness of your blood type in a small pool than in a big pool. Because in a big pool, you could say, you know, if there's 10,000 people on the island, well then you're 1 in 100 people. Where, you know, if there's 6 people, then you're like 1 in you know, you're the only one. You know, it's you did it. You know, so it means more because of a context, understanding what it means, what the evidence, the strength of the evidence is. So again, they say that the slit experiment is nail in the coffin evidence that lights a wave. Well, it's obviously not even close to that. If you have some sort of sense of applying logic reasonably, that there could be lots of other explanations, because you've only described one superficial. You've only duplicated one superficial expectation or prediction. All right, conclusive versus inconclusive. So that's what would make the accusation that you know, the strength of their conviction in their fundamental premises, that is bent space and wave theory is so strong, and it's just so much stronger than what they should be open to the conversation about some other mechanism, and they're totally closed to that conversation. They've drawn the conclusion, they've announced a judgment, and I would say that it's kind of obvious that they did it on incredibly weak evidence. Simplicity and completeness I already sort of just covered, but I mean those are the two things you'd say are meritorious things in comparing theories. Is whichever one's simpler you should have a bias towards. Not that doesn't prove anything, it just seems the elemental system should be simpler than the thing that's emergent. The emergent function is likely to be based on something less complicated. Complexity is an emergent property, not an elemental property. And completeness just means, yes, what simple mechanism explains the most. And those should be the standards by which you judge winners and losers, pretty much. All right, well, in this vein, I did a search on evidence in physics, and this one came up: experimental evidence for QED, apparently from Fermilab. And I think it's worth playing just because they don't have, their evidence is just so weak. So let's see what this guy says it is, and we'll call that a video. So, government paid for bullshit.
Precision is something that is valued in experimental science.
Says you. Okay, so that's just a statement. So you're saying in experimental science they care about precision when the evidence indicates you really don't. The Eddington experiment was not precision. It was horribly flawed in terms of the bad weather, all the different factors. Just not a very well done experiment. And you could go back to even these stupid experiments that the famous ether one, the Michelson-Morley. Do you think they have a rational theory of how interferometers work? Are you going to tell me that a half-silvered piece of mirror creates two equal beams? Even though a half-silvered mirror is a diffraction gradient, can it be denied? And so one beam of the light goes through the diffraction gradient and one doesn't. One goes through slits, the other light doesn't go through a slit. Now those can't be described as two equal beams, can they? I don't think they can. So is there precision there? I mean, where is this precision? Is there precision in the analysis of the multi-slit versus the single slit? Is there any precision in the analysis of even the double slit, in the sense that there's two patterns that you don't have any wave explanation for? Where's the precision in any of this analysis or in any of the way you do these experiments? So I don't see it.
While there are many precise measurements that have been made over the years, there is one that is truly impressive, and that is the measurement of how strong a magnet an electron is. The technical term for that, by the way, is the magnetic moment of the electron.
So again, it's a silly statement, right? The magnetic moment of an electron, it can only have one kind of charge. It can only be one thing. So it can't possibly have a moment, except when it's in an atom, you could argue. But it's charge, it's a monopole. So here's your precision. I would like the precise explanation for how the electron and the proton, how do they fail in terms of, why would I fail if I were to describe them as magnetic monopoles? In what way do they fail to qualify? In what way do they fail to be a perfect description of exactly what I would expect a magnetic monopole to look like? What would if a magnetic monopole existed, as you claim it doesn't, what would it look like? And I would argue you would end up describing something that's exactly like an electron and a proton.
Now, that might sound like an esoteric topic, and I suppose it is if you were the kind of person who lacks curiosity and refinement.
So this is just more, oh yes, if you're just some common folk who don't like our technicalities and our fucking bullshit mathematics.
But you are watching a physics video, which means that you're my kind of people.
Yeah, fuck
So I'm
you.
going to tell
You're not my kind.
you about a really cool and extremely precise measurement that is not only instrumental in proving the theory of quantum electrodynamics.
So again, it doesn't prove the theory of quantum electrodynamics in any way to sit there and measure the charge on an electron. No, I don't think so.
But is also at the forefront of modern research.
And modern research into what? How our consciousness is controlling the universe, how there's extra dimensions, dark matter. No, it doesn't have anything to do with any of the shit you're fucking messing with. Your gravitational waves, all your bullshit.
A video on the theory of QED, which you can watch if you're interested in that sort of thing. But in this video, I want to concentrate more on the...
It's not a link, so I guess I'd have to go into the description. Yeah, I don't know how much fun it's going to be to see their bullshit, because they're not going to show us the experiment that proves any of this crap.
experimental side. While there's a lot wrong about this mental image, you can picture the electron as a tiny spinning ball of electric charge.
So it doesn't mean anything. A spinning ball of lightning bolts that need to travel through a medium, a conductor. So can we agree on that that electricity can't travel unless there's atoms in the environment? It needs atoms to get from point A to point B. It can't go from point A to point B unless there's an atom somewhere. Can you at least agree on that? So what is this crap? It doesn't do any of this crap. It's smaller than the atoms. It doesn't do this. Anything like that. What does Rutherford say it does? Oh, it creates straight line rays. You can measure its effect on the world by having straight rays coming out of it, okay? And they will diverge over space, okay? And you can measure the intensity of its effect based on that divergence. Yeah. So what doesn't have anything to do with this slop, this randomy pandomy bullshit.
And if you spin a charge, you make a magnet.
So more nonsense. You spin a charge. There's no evidence they've ever spun an electron. Now you might think you can spin an electron around something, and then it's no. All they have as evidence is that atoms can be made into, they can be polarized, which means their charge balance can change. So they can go from being having just as much positive charge as negative charge at some location to having more negative or more positive. That is, the balance of the electrons can be in a different position than the proton, just as these fingers can be in different positions. And based on how close this finger is to you, you might not see any of, see this little finger here? You don't see any of him. He's like totally wiped out. Yeah. And I can change those distances, and I can change what you're seeing. That's the only evidence they have. They don't have any evidence that electrons are doing it by themselves, that free electrons move, and when they're free electrons moving, they're somehow creating a magnetic field. They have no evidence that's happening.
And it's simple. Now, there are a number of ways you can measure how strong a magnet is, but the easiest way is to put the magnet in an external magnetic field. Just like a spinning top will preset.
Say, I could take a beam of electrons, which at least we think is a beam of electrons, in an electron gun. That beam of electrons isn't creating a magnetic field. It's not creating a plus and minus field at all. There's no magnetic field coming off the beam of electrons. Now, if I put a beam of electrons in a magnetic field, clearly I can move it because electrons are going to react because they're monopoles. They're charge. And so if I'm changing the field, I'm making it more north and more south. That's the same as making it more positive and more negative. And if I make it more negative, they're going to move away. If I make it more positive, they're going to move towards. but they themselves, the beam, will not create any electric field or any magnetic field. Nothing is radiating from the photons, almost the little electrons that are, have momentum. They won't radiate to the universe anything in particular, except for maybe some photons.
It's because of gravity. A magnet will precess around the bigger magnetic field. By watching the precession, we can determine precisely.
So this again, so now they're comparing it to a physical mechanical device that's processing based on gravity and lots of other influences that are causing that. And they're comparing an electron to it and just saying somehow they know electrons are processing. They don't have any evidence of that.
The magnetic moment of the electron. So that's the basic idea.
There's no idea there. There's just made up. There's no evidence or reason to believe that electrons do any of that crap.
The electron has a particular electric charge and a particular spin, which happens to be a half.
So again, there's no half spin. It's just a retarded concept. Obviously, they're not really talking about spin. They're talking about what electrons do when they're part of atoms. They're really not talking about what an electron is by himself. And so the only property an electron has is a relationship to a proton. Okay, besides just having momentum by itself, as I would argue, it's always jittering in space because of the way it's composed. But that's all it has. At any one moment, it's moving a little in a direction. Or you can push it with a force, but it won't keep going. So if I push it with a force and put it into space, it won't keep going in that direction. It will stop moving and just go back to jittering again because the field will drag the energy out of it, the imbalance. It will drag the imbalance out of it. But there's no property of spin, and they even concede that they don't even know what that spin means, and that's why they have this idiotic thing of a half spin. It's not even coherent language. A half a spin. There's no such thing as spinning halfy. It's, you're spinning clockwise, you spin counterclockwise, you don't spin half.
And using straightforward traditional electromagnetic theory, you can calculate how...
So it's nothing straightforward about your electromagnetic theory. So again, what is that? What's the straightforward electromagnetic theory? They have absolutely no theory about anything electrical. They don't have any explanation for exactly how electricity moves through a wire. All they can tell you is, well, electrons drift, or this sort of happened. We don't know. They have no clue, so there's no theory.
Strong a magnet it should be. There are many ways you could write the numerical value for this point.
So it doesn't make any sense how strong a magnet an electron would be. There's no evidence an electron has any positive pole, that it has any dipole character, that it has any white side, black side or something. There's just no evidence that electrons have any such thing. They're not dipoles.
Depending on the units you pick. So what we do is pick the most convenient set of units possible, and in those units, the predicted magnetic moment is just the number 1, or unity. This just makes life easier. But if you want to see the number in, say, metric units...
So again, this is just more horseshit, which is basically saying most atoms end up being in a neutral state because an unneutral state is harder to maintain, an imbalance. But that's all he's really saying. And that's the 1.
You can Google the term Bohr
for an
magneton.
atom. Yeah, you can go, so more bullshit, like, oh, I'm supposed to go out and find the Bohr magneton. So again, we're going back 100 years to figure out what electrons are doing. So you haven't done any better in the last 100 years.
But I'm just going to use the convenient units in which an electron with a spin of 1/2 is predicted to have a magnetic moment of precisely 1. In science, prediction isn't good enough. So, in 1947, an American physicist with the unlikely name of Paul...
So again, this is supposed to be something called evidence, experimental evidence. And here we're already in so much mist and fog and crap. You could switch any of these this is a 3-card. You can do anything. I'm not following. Who's going to follow these bouncing ball, underneath your, nutshells?
Polycarp Kush measured the magnetic moment of the electron and got a number that was 1.00119.
Right, and he measured it how? So again, just think about it, okay? I mean, I did some thinking about it because you hear this word free electron. It makes absolutely no sense because electrons are charged. And so no matter where I put one in anywhere near matter, but it doesn't even matter if it's close to matter, right? It's just like light. It still has a pressure. If all the suns are over here, the whole universe is over here, and I'm standing over here, there's obviously going to be more light coming from this side than that side. So no matter where I am, I'm going to be motivated or moved by something. So they do these experiments with this assumption that somehow they can create a device that's isolated from gravity and it's isolated from any other, the fact is that the material you've tried to enclose your electron in can't be perfectly balanced. It's just not realistic. So you have to put it in, you have to trap it inside of a magnetic field. That's it. You have to create a fake field around it that basically says you can't go anywhere. We're going to hit you with as much pressure from one side as the other side. And then what are you going to be able to measure in that intense environment? I don't know. It's like... I don't know a good example, so I'll just leave it go.
So the measured number was very close to 1, but different. And his measurement was precise enough that he knew that this wasn't measurement error. So this was cool, and it was a big deal at the time. It proved that the simplest theory wasn't quite right. The tiny shift, which was just shy of 0.1...
So again, it's proved something. So again, this word used really excessively. And again, just all this pretense. Look at all this. We do all this crap on blackboards, and it's really cool. Proves we know what we're doing. No, it doesn't.
1-2% was real. And to explain it, physicists needed the theory of quantum electrodynamics, or QED. 1947 was about 70 years ago.
So again,
we've improved our...
So this is kind of horseshit, just because quantum electrodynamics was really just a recognition of the fact that the photon was a quanta of energy and that electrons were affected by quantas of energy. That electrons basically functioned by exchanging or interpreting quantas of energy. Doesn't include this horseshit that electrons are fucking dipoles.
Experimental and calculational techniques. That means that these days we can test the theory of QED to incredible precision.
Says him, right? So he just says it. There's no evidence that this precision has anything to do with any like you have completely misunderstood what's going on. There's no parallel experiments that I can go to. There's no, it's just the guy says so. We say so. Our margin of error is 0. But what are you actually measuring? They don't even know what they're actually measuring.
Current measured value for the magnetic moment of the electron is 1.001159652181, while the predicted value is 1.001159652182.
Predicted out of what? See, this is the joke, right? They said that the value was 1. They just established it. And then they go out and say, well, we're going to measure this thing for real. And he didn't explain how they measure it. So this is supposed to be the experimental evidence. He's not even going to tell us what the experiment is. What experiment did you do to get a number that small? That many decimal points. What exactly are you measuring? I mean, this could just be the waste, in a system, in a way you're measuring it. This change in the number. And again, what would the theory be based on? He told us that we just rounded it off to 1 for our mathematics, And now yet he's saying, no, but our mathematics predicted it would be 1.11596. Why would it predict that? So we get none of that.
You can see that the prediction and the measurement agree exactly, digit for digit, for 12 places. Where they start to disagree, it's due to known uncertainties in both the prediction and the measurement. In fact, within uncertainties, the two numbers agree. To give you a sense of scale, that's like predicting and
So again, there's just nothing. There's no evidence that this wasn't just a contrivance. Like they just did a synthesis of the experiment in the lab and then just synthesized this falling and then said, look, we measured it and we proved it. It falls at exactly this rate and blah, blah, blah. Well, of course it does. So what? But we're not shown what this measurement is. How did they measure this moment?
Measuring the diameter of the Earth with an accuracy of 1/5 the diameter of a human hair. This is crazy accurate.
Yeah, it's crazy silly.
Anytime you can get that
So
kind of
again,
agreement,
so now they're saying that they can measure things that, you know, on that kind of scale, that they could actually measure a difference in the size of the Earth of 1/5 of a human hair. You know, that they have a ruler that can do that. Yeah, no, you don't.
between a measurement and a prediction means that you're doing something right. And from
No, it doesn't. Not if your whole prediction has built into it a confirmation bias.
in this exercise, physicists have concluded that the theory of QED is an accurate description of the laws of the universe.
And what is the theory of QED? So again, he's not even going to tell us what the theory is. And so, you know, this is what, look, this is our evidence. Well, your evidence is you're not going to tell me what your theory is. You're not going to tell me how you predicted your number. And then you're not going to tell me how you did the actual experiment. None of those are included.
There are plenty of other examples where the calculations and measurements of QED agree, but this is the most...
Yeah, and there's plenty where they don't agree, where you just fudge. Okay, like the two-slit experiment, right? The most famous experiment, and they still don't explain why the pattern is fundamentally different looking in electrons, where it waves very gradually on and off, and in photons, very harsh bar-like lines. Why the difference?
precise. If you're looking for another example that is less numeric and more mind-blowing, QED also predicts...
More mind-blowing. Oh, well, gee, why don't you do the more mind-blowing one first?
that empty space isn't empty at all, but rather a constantly writhing, bubbling place with matter and antimatter particles constantly...
So again, so he just made up antimatter. Again, there's no evidence that this shit exists. So this is just such propaganda. And he puts the word evidence in here. He just talks absolute shit, and there wasn't a shred of fucking evidence anywhere in this video.
appearing and disappearing. You can take a look at my video on quantum foam if that interests you. Despite QED's incredible success...
Success at what? Yo, okay, that's right, nothing. Success at making up particles that have no function in the universe. Great.
There is a research effort in which this topic possibly points to undiscovered physics. When scientists turn the precision of QED to investigating the properties of the muon, which is kind of like the electron's heavier cousin, there are tantalizing hints of new physics.
So that'll be unexplained also. You know, the new physics will have something to do with, you know, disappearing and reappearing in different locations, or some time travel, morphing, shape-shifting, some sort of fucking bullshit.
When physicists study the magnetic moment of the muon, there is a discrepancy between the prediction and the measurement. And whenever data and calculations don't agree, that could well mean that you found something that your theory can't predict. We scientists have a name for that. We call it a discovery. The story of the magnetic...
So, more bullshit. So the magnetic moment of a muon, again, another particle that's supposed to be negatively charged, doesn't have any positive charge. How can it have a moment?
moment of the muon is cool enough to warrant its own video. If you want details, I got details, but there and not here.
Oh, great. So why don't you call this the non-experimental evidence video?
The bottom line is that both the theory and the measurements of QED agree to parts per trillion, making it the most precise physics theory ever proposed.
Oh, and again, so just more crap. you engineer a formula to describe an effect, and oh yeah, we got it right. Well, you should have it right, right? I mean, I should be able to figure out if I want 4, I can make 4 with 3 and 1, or I can make it 2 and 2. you know, you know.
And anytime you get that level of agreement, you know you did something right.
Right, and so we have no evidence of the agreement. We have no, again, he didn't put any, the guns are exactly identical, but he didn't put them on the table and show us. Oh, what a pile of crap. But what should we expect? You know, especially from the accelerator people. They're just looking to keep hyping as if they discovered something that matters. You know, that they've actually, like any of that, like all of their found particles could mean anything when they don't really function in any way. If you want to describe a magnet, you don't need neutrinos, you don't need muons, you don't need tau, you don't need any of that crap. Just useless crap. Anyway. Alright, so that was disappointing. I thought there'd be some explanation of the evidence. So I guess we'll have to play one of these other videos. Electrodynamics theory. So I probably won't have evidence in it either. So maybe next time I'll watch it and see if there's anything of value in it. But anyway, we'll just call it a day and move on. So until the next time and such. You know, there's just nothing to deal with. No rational counter arguments, no people. There's just nothing reasonable to even comment on. Bill Gates is just wasting time on flat earthers and the electric universe and blah, 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 blah. And it's just, I couldn't care. But anyway, until next time.